imagine.
My grandfather Philipp was born in Timisoara, and he married there, Rosa Holub, and they came together to Bulgaria around about the 1890s, after the defeat of the Turks. And as I said, I mentioned before, they had all their sons and so on. And as I said, my grandmother was given a block of land in which she subdivided in Gustilia. I visited the land, I know where it is. And it was a big block of land right in the middle of town, or the village. And she subdivided that land into individual smaller blocks for each of their sons to put up a house. We had our block, and so did everybody else. My grandmother had a how can I call it, in German we call it Gaststätte, a guest house, where it's not a hotel, it's a bar type of thing, you know, for drinkers, and you can get food there and you can get your alcohol there. She had that, and each one of her sons had to take turns and work behind the bar. But they all had their own individual businesses as well. So my father, for instance, had a shoe business. They made handmade shoes and repaired shoes. And Uncle Philipp, who was a carpenter, Uncle Joseph was also a carpenter, Uncle Assen was a how can I say, a fitter and turner. He worked with metal and things like, he made gates. I don't know what else he made, you know. And who else was there? Uncle Philip, Uncle Assen. And Uncle Tony, I don't know what he was. I honestly don't know what kind of an occupation that he had. And Uncle Hans, the one that stayed in Timisoara, I don't know what he was because I never met him. That was before I was born. I was born in Gustilia myself. I was born in Bulgaria, in Gustilia, in 1939. And we left Gustilia to come to Germany. In 1941, we were evacuated by the German army ahead of the communists coming into Bulgaria. And they didn't evacuate many people, just some people. I don't know why they evacuated us. I have a theory about it, I mentioned it yesterday.
I'm going to stop you there for a sec. I was going to say, if you can hear all that traffic outside. Can you hear all that banging outside?
Not really, no, the birds and the wind and stuff.
Okay, because there's like, it sounds like something people coming outside.
That's what was there?
Like something people do.
Yeah, I mean, I can hear it.
Okay, I'll just see what it is. What is it? There's like, it sounds like someone's doing work and putting things in a skip or something outside. Oh, there is a skip across the road.
It's like Fort Knox here, huh?
Yeah.
You got a balcony here too?
Yeah, yeah. Big long one here.
It doesn't matter, a little bit of
There's a guy
noise.
trying to squash stuff
It
into the
doesn't
skip.
matter, Amy, a little bit of noise. But this is not for publication, it's only for us anyway.
Okay. The evacuation, why they evacuated only a few, and
No, they evacuated because the Leichers were the majority of the Germans particularly in Gustilia, in our town. There was another one or two other families, and for instance the D family and the Wolf family and the Higher family. But when they came to evacuate us, well, they couldn't just evacuate us and not the rest of them, so they took probably the whole lot of them. And that was in 1941. So when we came back, when we came to Germany, well, incidentally, I was born in Bulgaria, and I also, the first 4 years of my life, I spoke Bulgarian. So that's my mother language, actually. And when we came to Germany, I had to then learn German, and I was educated in Germany. And we stayed there until from 1941 till 1959. In 1959, then we migrated to Australia.
Can you talk about the process of the evacuation? What you remember?
Well, not so much what I remember, but what I heard my parents and my uncles and aunts and so on, and the elder cousins, because I was the youngest one, speak. There was a commission a German commission that came into town, and they invited, I'm not sure whether they invited everybody or whether they ordered everybody. That's one thing I don't know, whether they invited everybody or whether they ordered everybody back to Germany. And they had to just leave within a matter of a few days. There was no time to sell anything. So you just had enough time to pack all your personal belongings. And we got traded off on a ship that went up the Danube River to Passau in Germany, right on the Austrian border. And from there we were disembarked, and we were put into a camp, all of us, and there were like a reception camp, refugee reception camp in Walchensee. And we were all together there, and from Walchensee, some of my relatives went to what is now called Tranreuth, or in that area, and others went to Hanover. But I'm not sure whether once that Hanover also came with us, or whether they went separately. This one I don't know, but as far as I know, they all went to Walchensee, and from Walchensee they went to the Tranreuth area, not Tranreuth itself, because Tranreuth at that time was still an ammunition dump during the war, and nobody really could go there except only for work. So when they arrived there, they worked there, but they weren't allowed to live in the town until after the war.
Had it been urbanised prior to the war?
No, it wasn't. There was as far as I know, there was just an ammunition dump that was built before the war or during the war. They only had a big Siemens factory there. I'm not sure whether they manufactured the ammunition there or whatever they did. I don't know. But they had a huge factory there from Siemens. At least it was Siemens after the war. What it was during the war, I don't know.
And the camp in Walchensee, was that a Red Cross camp, or was it a German?
No, it was a government camp. It was a hotel. You know, actually, before the war it was a hotel, and after the war it was a hotel again. You can actually go out as a tourist today and stay in that place. It's a hotel. It was quite nice, very nice.
And from there?
From there, my father got a job in Kochel. He got a job as a bootmaker in Kochel, and he worked there. My father expected every day to be called up, every day. Didn't get called up. None of my uncles got called up. Everybody else got called up. Heider got called up, Wolfs got called up, everybody else. Leicher did not get called up. But that's another mystery.
And unusual too,
Yeah.
in those times, because they were calling up any able...
No, we didn't get called up. They called up everybody. 70-year-olds or something, 60-year-olds.
Although
they were all in their prime. They were all in their 30s, 40s. My father was in those days. He wasn't very old. He was born in 1914, and in 1941 he would have been 14. 14. He would have been 26. Just on 30 years.
and
I mean,
he
very
had been,
ideal soldier, you know.
but your father had been in the army while he was still in Bulgaria, is that
He
correct?
was in the army. He was in the Bulgarian army, not in the German
During
army.
what years?
That was before 41. As a matter of fact, I took him out of the army. He didn't
Why?
have to finish serving because he was stationed in Croatia, in Zagreb. And when the commission came, I'm not sure whether my father, he might have been in, I don't know whether he happened to be in the village. I don't think so. He might have been in Zagreb. They called him back and took him back and never re-enlisted him. Or any of my uncles, you know, or any of them. Uncle Philipp never served in the German army, Uncle Joseph, nobody.
And
No.
and any of your cousins that were adolescent age?
No, nobody. Koshwan, but Koshwan, don't forget, he wasn't a Leicher. He was drafted. Joseph and Paul, they were soldiers. And also Hai, as soon as he came home, he got drafted. He worked, he finished up in the Africa Corps.
And they
In
all came
Africa.
home?
They all came home, yeah. Nobody got killed, no, nobody. But none of the Leichers. Beat that one. And nobody got killed because, they never served in the German army, for starters. But from bombing and other accidents and whatever, nobody got killed, nothing. Yeah. So we were very lucky that we survived intact, and I'm interested to know how in Slovakia and wherever else, how did they get through the wartime, and after the war? They must have had great deal of difficulties there.
So from Kochel, then
From Kochel, we went to near Tranreuth, because in Tranreuth he couldn't settle in Tranreuth because Tranreuth was a ammunition dump during the war, and it was very tightly high security. You couldn't get in, and only with a pass, and you had to work there and everything. Okay, so my relatives worked in that ammunition dump during the war even. And my father started a shoe business in St. Georgen, which is 3 kilometers from Tranreuth. And we lived in Hasmaning, which was about 6 kilometers from Tranreuth, not very far at all. We could go on foot actually. And he started this shoe business, handmade shoes and shoe repairs and so on. And then after the war, when the Americans came in and they occupied that camp, they had a base there. They had maybe 100 soldiers or something, just a company of soldiers, not many. And they opened up Tranreuth to outsiders. They kept all the workers that were there from before. They kept them there, and instead of whatever they did before, I don't know what they did before, but after the war, then they dismantled all the. They removed all the ammunition, and they exploded all the bunkers and everything. I remember that quite clearly when they blew up the bunkers, yeah. And they worked there initially, and then later on they were allowed to open businesses there, and they also bought land, and some of the existing buildings were sold and converted to homes. And that's when we then came to live in Tranreuth. My father started a shoe business again, you know. And that business went for a while, and then because there was no factory, no shoe factories, nothing. People had to wear shoes all the time, you know. In a country like Germany, without shoes, you cannot live. So shoes is very important. And when the big shoe factory started, then he lost all his clientele because they were making mass-produced shoes much cheaper than he could do handmade shoes. And his business sort of went down. And we started then another business, making neckties like that. And that took off very well for about a couple of years, 2 years or so. We sold a lot of ties. We sold 1,000 ties like that a day. So it's a lot of ties. And when that nosedived, that's when I said to my father, look, why don't we, when we started another business, we started to, I had an idea, popcorn. We bought a popcorn machine and we started to package it and we tried to sell that. You know, because I had to have some kind of income. And that was too complicated to get going, packaging and cartons and delivering, and it was just too complicated, and we said, no, forget it. And that's when we decided to come to Australia. But before then, in 1956, we tried to emigrate to Canada, and we had everything set. And when my father got sick, just days before departure, lucky actually that it happened before he left rather than on the way. He would have probably died on the way, because there would have been no hospital, no operating possibility or anything. So that was actually a blessing in a way that it happened before he, rather than on a journey, on the ship or on a train or something, you know. And
he had a burst appendix.
He had a burst appendix, yeah. So when he went to the doctors, they took him and operated on him immediately. And I took him from the surgery straight to the operating theatre. Yeah. And that put paid to Canada. And then afterwards, we decided to come to Australia instead, 1959. So we were applied in sort of early 1959, and we had the papers ready by the end of 59, and then on the 20th of December we left Germany, 1959, and we arrived in Australia on the 26th of January, 1960.
Yeah, and you left Germany via what port?
Via Bremerhaven, from Bremerhaven. Castle Felicia was the name of the ship that we came on.
Were you sad to leave Germany? Were you sad to leave Germany?
At the time, yes. I had parties going every day for a week. I had so many friends, and I was drunk for a week. I didn't know I want to walk up on the ship.
What was how did you feel the socio-political climate was as you were leaving Germany? Was it something you were glad to be leaving behind?
No,
the way
it
the
wasn't,
unrest
no.
and
It was
the new
Germany was
evolving
okay.
Germany?
It was very good. It was very good, except for, I think that the time for the tradespeople, like for small manufacturing was over. You know, especially with items that you like clothing, footwear, you know, knitwear, that you could, you know, like hand knitting or even with a small knitting machine. Those times were over. You know, like, I mean, they were producing, you know, mass-produced articles. Shoes were just couldn't compete. It just could not compete.
So it was more economically motivated rather
Economically motivated, yeah.
Rather than
motivated. And my father didn't want to take a job in a shoe factory. He wasn't the type that worked for other people. Like, I feel the same. All the Leichers, I'm curious about the Leichers in Slovakia, whether they work for other people or whether they work for themselves, but it is ingrained in all my uncles and aunts and cousins and everybody. They all, to the large, all the uncles, all worked for themselves. They had actually all my uncles had a co-op business, a big co-op. It was actually the biggest business in town, and at the time, the biggest business in town, because when they, other than Siemens, when Siemens opened there, the Handwerker Betriebsgenossenschaft Traun, that was the single biggest business in town, because it serviced, we had, if you built a house, they had like building companies that come in from outside and built the brickwork and everything, but everything else, like all the windows and doors and the staircases and so on, it was all built by us, by a Leicher business, Traungenossenschaft, and the roof structure and everything. So they did all the timber work on a lot of houses in Traunreich, I tell you, hundreds and hundreds of houses. So they did all that. And afterwards they also had a hardware business, a furniture business, electrical business. So if you afterwards built a house, and when the people came in and they needed furniture, where did they get it? From us.
So how was village life there in Traunreich with the family? Everybody was close together?
Yeah, well, they built all their houses in one street, Wichenstraße. There's a number of houses there, and each one of my uncles had its own house, all in the one street. So they bought again, they bought the individual lots, but in the same street. And they all built their houses, and all the houses were again built by the Genossenschaft. Yeah. And unfortunately, that business, because they were all Genossen, they were members of the co-op. The uncles and aunts, they all worked. They were owners, and they also worked in the production. They worked on the benches and what have you, installations and what have you. And then when their children came into the business as well, this is when the difficulty started. Everybody wanted to be boss of the young ones. The old ones, they were okay. When the young ones started to come in, they all wanted to be boss. They didn't want to work anymore, they just wanted to command. Now you can only have one boss, you can't have 10 bosses. So what happens is that the business had to carry more and more young upstarts who didn't want to work, and they were just riding on the glory of their parents. And out of disagreement, they couldn't agree anymore on who was to run. My uncle Philipp was the chef, he was the boss of the whole organization. He got all the orders and everything, and then all of a sudden they wanted to depose him and put somebody else in, and that's when it collapsed, because he started the whole business and he ran the whole business for many years. He got all the orders, he kept up to 50, 60, 100 people working. That's how many orders he got. And because a lot of the times he wasn't in the office, he was always out and about trying to get orders, and I thought, oh, well, like he's never in the office, he's out gallivanting, but he wasn't. And even if he did, doesn't matter. He got the work. How he did
and
it.
Why did they not migrate with us?
Who?
Uncle Philip, Uncle Joseph.
To Australia.
Yeah,
No,
it must have been very hard.
No, when we left in '59, the co-op was still going. Oh, yeah, it was going. Yeah, it was going up until, I think about 65, 1970, something like that. That's when it folded.
Right.
Yeah, no, it didn't fold when we were there, no, afterwards. I didn't know until on one of my visits, return visits, that's when I found out. Yeah.
All right. So, what we know from the Slovakian family, the only link we have is they have a great-grandfather named Alec Leicher, who was born in Timisoara.
Well, this could be a relative of my grandfather, I would say. It has to be, because they would have all come from the same place in Lorraine,
And the other word for
I mean, the thing
Lorraine?
is that knowing the history where they came from, when they were in Timisoara, that might have been already 50, 60, 100 years later. Say if they came in 1820 for argument's sake. And my grandfather left in say 1890, that would have already been 70 years. Well, in 70 years, okay, some of the relatives might have gone their own way, and okay, they know that we're related, but then I have no more relationship. But it doesn't mean that you don't come from the same origins, same genes. So I would say there's only one solution, that the people in Slovakia must be related to us. We are in Australia now, but it doesn't matter where we are, okay? Blood runs the same.
That's right. Can you tell the story of how Yuli Leicher was transported to Siberia for the Soviet work camps?
Yeah, this is I think one of the daughters of Johannes from Timisoara. As far as I know, she was taken by the Russians and taken to Siberia. I'm not sure whether she returned or not. On this side of the family, you have to speak with Andreas. He knows.
Andreas?
He knows better. He knows the whole family history there.
And that is Andreas.
Andreas Farkas. He is. It could be the son of Greta. I'm not exact. Must be. He must be a descendant of it, because his name is not. If it would have been from one of the boys, his name would have been Leicher. But he must be the descendant of one of the girls. I think there was two girls, Greta and another one.
The Greta Leicher.
Greta Leicher, yeah. And she married a Farkas, and I think he's the son of that, or the grandson. I'm not exactly sure. Okay, I haven't had much time to speak to him, because every time I'm in Tranroid, I'm so occupied with my family, and I usually add him on at the end. Last time I was there, I nearly couldn't even see him. We saw him at 9 o'clock at night, because we went to one of my last, well actually, Kati De, my first cousin. She lives only 500 meters away. So after her, we had dinner there, Elias and myself, and then we went to Andreas, and that was 9 o'clock, and by the time we stayed until about 11 or 12 o'clock, and we talked about this, and he's actually got a photo of, I didn't even know that he had a photo of Uncle Johan with his whole family. And there was not enough time to get I might have even photographed it, I might even have it on photo of it.
Johan Jr. or Johan Senior?
No, this is.
Because there was a Johannes Leicher who had a Johannes Leicher.
Correct. This is my uncle.
So it must be Junior.
This is my father's brother. And he had another son, and his name was also Johan, as far as I know. So that's all. I mean, I don't know too much, because I haven't had much opportunity to speak with Andreas about his side of the family, and but that's still connected to our side of the family, because they come from the same grandfather. But I think that the people in what's it called again, the country there? Slovakia. Always Slovakia, Slovenia, I forget, always confusing. In Slovakia, they would be from another branch of the Leicher family there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems that way. They look like us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, see, the other thing is, I'd like to know whether they speak any German, and whether they were aware that they have a German name in Slovakia. I mean, I mean, I don't know where they live. I have got no idea where they live, but Bratislava is very close, only 50 kilometers or so from Vienna, so it's not very far away at all. So I think I would be, if they don't speak German, I would be very surprised that they don't, frankly. Because it's so close to the border. I mean, normally in a border regions, people always speak two languages.
They don't speak German,
No? Not one word?
No, they didn't even know the name was German. They wondered where the
Can you
name
believe
came
it?
from. Yeah.
See?
So, would you like to send special greetings to them? The father
Naturally.
is Zoltan, and Vera is his wife, and the children are Radomir, Lubomir, and Rado's wife is Mirka.
I can't remember all these names. You know.
Start with a greeting for Zoltan and Vera. They're the parents.
Well, I want to send my best wishes to Zoltan and Vera Leicher. Her name is Leicher, isn't it? Yes, my best wishes. Yeah, I hope to see them one of these days.
And now the children, the oldest, they have two boys, Radomir and Lubomir.
And I believe you have children, Radomir and Lubomir. Are we talking about?
The children of Zoltan and Vera.
I know, but I mean, are they male or female?
Male,
Male.
two sons.
Well, I mean, the names are sort of a bit unfamiliar whether they are male or female names.
Yeah. So they're two sons, Rado and Lubo.
Rado and Lubo. And how old would they be? Any idea?
They're in their one is close to 30. The younger one, Lubomir, he's just in his early 20s. He's the little brother.
Okay, and Zoltan, what was his father's name?
I don't know, I don't know Zoltan's father's name, but I do know that Zoltan's grandfather or great-grandfather was Elek. We found the common denominator.
So they came
Elek was
from
Timisoara.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
the link.
And
That's the link, absolutely.
And Radomir has now married a lovely lady, Mirka. She's also a school teacher, called Leicherova. So now the name.
Leicherova.
So now the name becomes.
Wait a second. Leicher married a Leicher?
A Leicher. So Radomir Leicher has married Mirka, right?
America, but is she,
But
was
her
she a
name,
Leicher also?
no. Her name is now Leicherova.
Ah, she changed her name, okay.
Yeah. So it takes the feminine form
yeah,
at the end of the
yeah,
name, which is
okay,
very interesting. So,
Yeah, well, this is how, see, over time things change.
yeah,
Names change.
yeah. And when we're now at the beginning of a new history of this name, Leicherova, where she'll actually know where it's come from and why it has an Ova, and perhaps in future, if they have any sons, they might even be a Leicherov eventually.
Yeah.
Which
But
would
I
really be
just
interesting.
want to clear people up about the name Leicher, okay? Our name is one of the oldest names in Germany. One of the oldest family names. Because, and it goes back maybe 1,500 years. Because before Germany was Germany, Germany and France was one kingdom at one time. And we got our name back then. This goes back to maybe the year 450 or maybe even before then. Because the name Leicher means, originally it wasn't Leicher the way we spell it today. We spell it exactly the same today, but it had a little apostrophe before. It was called Le Eicher. It had an L apostrophe and an Eicher. And what an Eicher means in the German language, it means it's a keeper of weights and measures. And that little L, that was an apostrophe, that was a title that we had under the French aristocracy. We had the lowest ranking title because all the servants of the king, they had a title Le. And all the landowners or those people who served the king and distinguished themselves in some other way, they were given a land and a title, and they were given the title De. And those people who worked like the servants of the king, like we were keepers of the weights and measures of the king. As long as that particular kingdom existed, that was under the Merovingian kings. It's going back to that a long time. And when they lost their kingdom, we also lost our title, and we lost that little apostrophe. Instead of L. Leicher, we became a Leicher. That's how the name originated. But when you look at there's most people in Germany or in Central Europe didn't have a name, no name. Maybe they had a Christian name, maybe even some no name. In Holland, for instance, the Dutch didn't have a name until 1800. When Napoleon came, he gave them a name. They didn't have any name. They just called John, Hans, Peter, this sort of thing, and that's it. They had no family name. He came and he gave them a name, but we had a name already 1,500 years before then. So there's no older name than our name, I can tell you, absolutely. You can look back at all the name registers and you will not find a name that is older than us, because when the first census they did was back in the Merovingian days. It was from almost prehistory, a long time ago, and we are registered then. That was before Berlin existed, before Munich existed, before any of the big cities existed. There was only just a few. Köln might have existed, Aachen existed, places like that. Berlin didn't even exist in those days. And even Munich is only about 900 years old, 800-900 years old. We're looking about another 500-600 years before then.
So the other names, the old names for Lorraine were?
The old names was, the original name was...
Sorry, I need to do a tape change.
Oh, okay.